Hello, welcome to our first episode on USA in the 1920s, and we're going to be looking today at the Depression. We're looking at USA, therefore we're looking at paper 1, Opportunity and Inequality in America from 1920 to 1973. So the Depression, it kicks off due to the Wall Street crash, and this is where the stock market crashed. So in 1929, share prices collapsed as investors panicked and realised many businesses were failing. Throughout the 20s, when you looked at the surface, it looked like the economy was doing really well, because as we know, wages are going up, employment is going up, everything seems great. But when you look below the surface, people realised that in fact there had been something called over-speculation happening. And this meant that people had been buying and selling shares at inflated price values, making them seem more valuable than they were. And when people realised this, there was a huge panic and shares were sold en masse. This was a big problem because the economy was heavily dependent on credit, and when the crash hit, this credit became unavailable, causing the economy to spiral. So people sold their shares and they didn't get as much money as they wanted for them because the actual value of the shares was lower than what they thought. So they've lost money there. And because there's a lack of credit, people are running out of money in general, and the whole economy starts to go into freefall. This has some serious economic effects on people. Firstly, banks fail, and 10,000 banks closed between 1929 and 1933, meaning that people lost their savings and loans were difficult to get. Just like individual people had been speculating on the stock market, banks had been doing the same. But they'd been using people's life savings to kind of gamble on the stock market with. And when these shares were proven to be worthless, people's life savings were gone. It also meant it was really hard for people to get loans, and people with nothing need money from the bank, but the banks have closed, you can't get money out. Alongside this was bankruptcy, and 100,000 businesses closed as industrial production dropped by a third. This led to unemployment. And by 1933, 25% of the workforce was unemployed, and that's 14 million people in total, compared to only 5% in 1929. So we can see how in a short period of time, unemployment has skyrocketed in America. This leads to some negative social effects as well. Firstly, homelessness, and this became widespread as people lost their homes and slept in Hoovervilles. Their life savings have gone, their businesses closed down, they've lost their job, and therefore they can't pay their mortgage. So they're having to live in these shanty towns constructed out of corrugated metal and anything they could find in the streets. They're known as Hoovervilles. They're named after President Hoover, who was blamed for not dealing with the Depression well enough. Alongside this was severe poverty, and there were instances of poverty and even some instances of starvation occurring. I think 4 people died of starvation in New York in 1933. And this is because there was no national welfare or unemployment benefits, so people relied on food banks and soup kitchens. Another group that was negatively affected in a social way were farmers. And this is because overproduction had created a dust bowl. So in the middle of America, where lots of crops were grown, it had been overfarmed for years and years, turning the fertile land into sand. And this left many farmers in debt, evicted, or as migrant workers known as hobos, and 600,000 of them travelled across America looking for work. Right, so we've gone through a whistle-stop tour of the Wall Street crash and the Depression. We've quickly talked about the causes, and we've gone through the economic and social effects. Well done for watching this. Do some retrieval now, have a go at a quiz, do one of the mind maps in your booklet, or do a past question that is linked in the description. See you in the next episode.